Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Sloppy Lab. This is Bottom of Beaker, the weekly show about the design, ducks, and strategy of Keyforge. Everybody, and I mean everybody's favorite unique deck game. I'm JT Russell, and with me tonight is the man who is here to tell you that you don't need to open 3,457 decks of Keyforge to find the one for you. Maybe just one is good. I don't know.
Ah, that's beautiful.
Beautiful indeed.
Music to my ears. I love hearing that.
And I am indeed, of course, talking about Quick Draw 3457. How are you doing this evening, Quick Draw?
I am great. I am wonderful. How are you, Mr. JT Russell?
I am sleepy. I'm sleepy, but I'm feeling excited. I'm not going to
All
lie.
right.
It's been a
Some,
long week in the old Russell household.
yeah. Those mutant Russell Sprouts at it
Oh,
again.
man. Oh, man. You know it.
I take it you're excited about the news that dropped a couple hours ago.
I am excited. I am was just kind of thinking through which of the vault tours I might be able to hit. So hopefully, hopefully one. I have to admit that Philly. I had my hopes for Philly because that's a very easy one for me to get to logistically. But I don't know, Rochester or maybe the Maryland one could be possible too. Those are both possible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Those are the two I'm targeting as well. They're not too far from me. Probably just as easy for me to get to as Philly, but I know that Philly is a bigger airport, I think, than definitely Rochester, but I'm not sure what the closest airport is to the Maryland one.
Hmm.
But hopefully, Rochester and Glen Burnie, Maryland, are accessible enough to folks that are coming in from further away than me. So, um, yeah, I'm pretty excited as well. Those are the two I am targeting, and we'll see what the wife says about when I can go and
Get the travel plan sorted
continue
out.
to, yeah,
Yeah.
continue my healthy hobby that I have here.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Yeah, Philly was always easy for me just because I have an office there. Yeah, so it's like easy to like go right from work into playtime. Um, but we'll see. Got some family in Rochester. Could work out. Got some friends in the Baltimore area. I'm
There you
assuming
go.
that Glen Burnie is near Baltimore. I don't actually know, to be honest, but
I've never heard of Glen Burnie. I looked it up earlier just to see how far away it was from me. And I didn't actually look to see if it's close to Baltimore or where. I
well,
imagine it is.
we'll have to ask Julie July. So, yeah.
Yeah. I'm guessing the Bay Witches may have had something to do with this.
I believe it's their
They
home store.
are, yeah, that's great. That's awesome. And I love to hear that. So if you didn't see in the announcement today, they are hosting vault tours at game stores this year, not at hotels. I think that's a great choice. It supports the stores, and I think it definitely had some financial aspects to it. I'm guessing cheaper to have a bunch of people come into a store and spend money than it is to rent a large hall at a hotel. So I think it's a win-win. Pretty happy with that.
Yeah, you have to imagine that the store owners themselves are probably like, yeah, totally. Come in and have a big, large event here. That'll be fine, as opposed to renting out a
Yeah,
hall, right?
I think not every store has the size for an event like this.
Hmm.
There was used to be one here in Pittsburgh that definitely could have. They unfortunately closed about a year or two ago. They had an amazing space. Pretty famous in the Magic the Gathering world. I'm not sure if you know of Mr. Nice Guy Games.
I know the name. I know the name.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, they were here in Pittsburgh. He had a very prolific store, I think online and in person. I played a lot of games there. Massive, massive gaming hall there. Rumor has it he sold his Magic the Gathering collection to Post Malone.
Hey, right on. Maybe he opened the One Ring.
I don't think he did, but maybe he did. Maybe that's why he retired. Maybe closed the store.
There you go. Nice.
Anyway, the other ones, Roseville was already mentioned by Ghost Galaxy probably a month ago. San Antonio, Texas in May, and then Las Vegas, Nevada in July. Rounds out the North American Vault Tours. For the international audience, if you scroll down on the page you have right now, I think it was Germany and Italy and there's one in Shanghai. If I'm not mistaken,
Yep.
and there's one in Spain as well. How
In
about that?
Vietnam. Yeah.
And Vietnam. Yep.
Not too
So
shabby.
not bad. Unfortunately, it says they tried to get one in the UK, couldn't find a good partner, but if you're in Europe or rest of the world, hopefully these locations are convenient for you. And it's nice that there are more Vault tours outside the U.S. this year than last year.
Totally. Totally. And they made it just in the nick of the time too. I know there were a few of the other podcasts and content creators out there were like, yeah, they said February. Well, they got an extra day, I guess. So see if it comes out in
They made it.
February.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's great.
So
But yeah, super excited. Worlds for sure. Hopefully a Vault tour at least was on my list. Yeah.
yeah, I Worlds is on my list still. Again, hopefully too far away for me to say for sure, but yeah, it's just good to finally get this news. I'm happy that the dates are out there. We can all start planning and hopefully see each other at a Vault tour again soon.
Absolutely. Well, why don't we jump into the old topic du jour, as it were, the evening? Yeah,
Yeah.
why don't you tee this one up for us? What are we talking about, Quick Draw?
So what's the deal with Archon? Um, this I want to give a little backstory before we go into what we're talking about because we've had plenty of episodes about Archon. We've had plenty of episodes about power creep. We've had plenty of episodes about adaptive and those kind of things. And I want to try to explain my mindset for this one. And um, obviously, Grim Reminders has just come out. It's available to most players around the world. People have been playing it online now since its release on TCO a couple weeks ago. And when I started to think about this episode and what I wanted to talk about, I kind of just I forced it on you. I was like, JT, we're talking about this week, and you were gracious enough to accept it. I was very emotional when I said that. I had a lot of strong feelings. I had an inkling that this episode was going to be me on a soapbox talking about what's wrong in the world. And as I started to kind of research and kind of look into what I wanted to talk about, I had a kind of I don't know if a revelation is too strong of a word, but I have I've learned a lot in my research about this game and what I love about this game. And I'm going to have a very different tone than I thought I was whenever I first pitched this to you, but it doesn't change what I want to talk about this week. It's going to change my outlook. And I hope you guys leave this one feeling inspired and optimistic as opposed to a lot of the doom and gloom and everything. And funny story also, just to cap out the intro here, is that I originally was going to have a very dour name for this episode, and um, you talked me down from that, which is good because here we are. Like I really do think that there is lots of reason for hope with this game, with as much negativity as we've seen about power creep and grim reminders and Archon and things like that.
Mm-hmm. So you're telling me that instead of Dr. Sheep, I've got a little SC Steel.
Can we talk about Dr. Sheep for a minute? I'm going to call him out.
Oh dear. I was okay. I guess.
See, I think people watching on Twitch, you can see behind me. There's a cardboard box right here. Dr. Sheep, great seller that he is. He had some Dark Tidings decks that I was interested in. 4 decks. I was like, how's $20? And he's like, great, no problem. And I paid him plus a little extra for shipping, and I get a package on my door today, and it is a large, heavy cardboard box from Dr. Sheep. And I'm like, oh no, what happened here? And I open the box, and there are 200 bulk decks from Dr. Sheep. And I feel completely played. And I got the 4 that I wanted, so I can't complain. But he said that he found a convenient way to offload his bulk decks. And so thanks, Dr. Sheep. Hope you're listening.
This is a thanks question mark? I don't know.
That's exactly what it is. A thanks question mark. Precisely.
My question to you though, Quick Draw, is how many of those decks are complete decks, or are there any like shredder remnants in there?
I think they're all complete decks,
Okay.
with one exception, and one of the exceptions is actually one that I wanted to buy, which is a Dark Tidings deck that was like one of the misprints where it has half of one deck and half of another deck.
Cool.
And so I have 2 half decks that I got. I don't believe that was a victim of Shredder, but I have like the yellow card that came with like the divider. So it's definitely a misprint. But I have both Archon cards.
It was the early experiments with Alliance Quick Draw. That's what it was.
It
What
could
it
have been.
was.
It could have been. Although it was a failed experiment because I think there are two very, very spicy untamed houses in there. So
I mean, I would love to have seen you or somebody open that up in a sealed event and get the ruling to play him, play your deck as it came.
right as it lies,
Play as it
this is what I
lies.
got.
Ground rules. That's right.
Yeah.
Nice.
All
Okay.
right. Sorry for the tangent. You mentioned Dr. Sheep, and I was like, this. I mean, it's right here, and I had to give him a shout out.
Well, I appreciate that because it's sort of forcing you into some more hard woodworking, right? Hardware building. We see
Yeah.
one
The
card catalog, but there's going to be another
the other
shortly.
card catalog behind me that I built is not big enough for the number of decks that I have already, and now my collection has literally increased by 40% today. So
You are being force fed to whale status. Quick draw. That's what's happening.
yeah, which is exactly what I'm going to talk about not doing, which is kind of ironic that it arrives today. Okay, sorry. That was fun though. It was a really fun surprise. I think my wife was a little bit less enthusiastic about that surprise. Um, but I'm in my own office now, and so I can put however many KeyForge decks I want in here. Um, all right, where were we? At the
This is
beginning, I
episode
think, right?
83.
And it is now. Um, what's the deal with Archon?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I had a couple games last week, and I think if everyone calls back to the episode we had with Zoc on here, where we talked about Winds of Exchange, and I kind of like expressed my feelings for that set, what I didn't like about it, and included in there was like the power creep and kind of like I haven't wanted to play online because I haven't wanted to play against more of these woe monsters that show up all the time when you're playing online. And so I've been playing Grim Reminder sealed with my locals ever since it's arrived from the Game Found, and I've had tons of fun. And when you're playing it sealed, you don't care about the power creep. You don't care about crazy stuff you're doing because it's just a fun sealed game, and you move on to the next one and you're fine. And then as TCO released Grim Reminders, I started to play a few games on TCO, and I'm just like running into these ridiculous decks with insane combos, insane bursts, huge swings, and I got that same feeling that I got from playing WoW all those times, which is that like I'm not having fun.
Hmm.
Like, why am I still going back to this Archon format when it's becoming less and less fun for me? I feel like I have less and less control, not because of variance in this case, but because there is less time in a game. And we've talked about this many times in this show now, where if you have a deck or a card or a set really like that can produce decks that can generate 6 amber a turn, that's going to be a much shorter game than older sets that might generate 3 amber a turn. You know, and in longer games, you have more control, you have more options available to you, you have more agency to like make decisions and change the game. And I'm feeling again with Grim Reminders that the game is being shortened because of this power creep. And it makes it less fun to me because I don't feel like I have the control that I want in this game. And if you've been around the Discord servers the last couple days, there's been just almost nonstop talk about how Grim Reminders is ruining the game and Ghost Galaxy power creep is way too high and Ecto Charge should not be allowed to forge keys for free and
Mm-hmm.
all this stuff. And I've partaken in many of those conversations. And then once I started to kind of prepare for this episode here, I've taken more of a back seat in those conversations. And hopefully by the end of this episode, it's clear why to other people. But it's become clear to me that Archon has become just very hard to control, and I worry about its long term health and how much longer it really has. Because if we continue to see new sets up the power curve more and more and more, then we're going to kind of eventually bump out a lot of the older decks that people have. The game's going to become a little bit less accessible to people because they might have these old decks that they've loved and they can't play them anymore. And for players like me, it's just less fun. And so I do worry about the long term health of the game for that reason. Um, I mean, let me ask you first before we go further. Like, how real do you feel this is? Like this power creep and this, the last two sets of Keyforge, how it feels like we're like way stronger than we've ever been before.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I'm gonna answer that directly first, and then I have a kind of follow up question for you, I guess. I I do feel that we've been upping the power level generally the past couple sets. We're not at the point right now where I'm worried about, the game falling over, imploding next year, right? Because things have gotten too bad. But I do believe that Keyforge is a game that would benefit from some sort of like pressure release valve on the power level front, right? We need some way to drive folks toward the newer sets, get them exploring deeper into the current set than just ratcheting up the power level and getting a new layer of cream on top of what came before. And we spent a couple episodes already talking about set rotation. Like that's one possibility, right? Where you can have a mechanism for getting decks to turn over, getting the environment to move forward without having just power level being the driving force. And so I think that's more of like an larger existential worry, like, oh, this is a thing the game's going to need to solve for at some point. And I think if we get too invested in kicking the can down the road, then it's going to feel that much worse to reset to a healthy level. And so I do feel like it's a thing we need to solve before the next 5 years, right? It's something that needs to be resolved, because I don't know if we talked about this last time or not, as you keep ratcheting up the power level, you can only really approach the point where it becomes solitaire, because once you cross into that territory, it's not really a game anymore per se, in the sense that there's not really meaningful interaction. So that's something you have to be very mindful of. So that was kind of my direct response. I'm not at the point yet where I'm like, oh gosh, this is too much. The game's, there's Archon's no longer a meaningful format. I don't think we're there yet, but I do believe that lower powered games at Keyforge are generally more skill testing and more interesting to me personally than the higher powered games of Keyforge. Right? Doesn't mean I won't play Archon. Doesn't mean I don't go on and jam competitive games on TCO. But I think that's true if you look at the kind of the luck skill deck breakdown determining the outcome of a match, right? I do think that those top tier Archon games, you see a higher allotment towards the luck because of just there being that much less room for meaningful decisions to factor into the outcome, right? They're still there, but
Yeah,
it's diminished.
for sure.
Yeah.
There's two things that I want to clarify before we go too much deeper, and one is that I also like Archon. I
Mm-hmm.
still play it. I'm going to be playing Archon at the Vault Tours because of the way the schedule is. More excited for Sealed, but that's not for today's discussion. But when I am talking about Archon tonight, I want the listeners to think I'm not just talking about the Archon format. When I say Archon, I'm using it a little bit more loosely. I am talking about a format where you bring a single deck and you try to bring the most powerful deck you can to beat your opponent as badly as you can.
Mm-hmm.
And that might be, I mean, Alliance falls into the same bucket. Obviously, it's not Archon, but you're trying to bring the strongest, most powerful thing you can. Um, Archon is like that. And, Triad is not really, there's more nuance to Triad. I appreciate Triad more. Hexad is more nuanced as well. So I appreciate that. But, they still kind of fall into a similar problem. They're just a little bit mitigated by the agency that you have in the banning decisions and things like that. And there was a second preface thing here that I wanted to say is that I don't hate Archon. I don't hate people that like Archon. Like people have different tastes, and my level of taste for Archon might be different than someone else's. And I'm not saying that your Archon's dying. I'm saying that for players like me, that's not what I'm interested in
Hmm.
specifically. And it doesn't mean that I'm right or wrong. It doesn't mean that you're right or wrong. It's just we have different interests in what we're getting out of the game, and that's totally fine.
Yeah. No, very fair. And good question from the chat. Orion Floxamal pointing out that I have a match coming up this week with team member JDG314 in the triad leg of the current team event that's being run. And these are three high-powered decks They are, and the matchups are very nuanced. Like I'm sure you've been testing it. Quick Try saw, uh,
No, not at all.
I saw you online last night for like 3 hours, and I'm like, that is a Cy Filovecchi's match being tested.
Yeah, maybe.
Which,
I will share all of the secrets after your match.
yeah, yeah, you're so many tells. Like, okay, this match has been running for over an hour. It's Cy versus something. It's got to be. Oh, they're playing a reversal match. It's got to be Rector. Okay. Nice,
Guilty.
nice.
Yeah.
Guilty. But yeah, no. To the point from the chat, this is a great point. I don't think we're there yet, where they don't exist. I think it's a trend looking out that I'm like, yeah, we should figure this out before it becomes a real problem. I do think that it's an effect that folks will feel now, even especially more pronounced in single deck, Archon solo type settings. Triad, traditional Triad, waters down the problem a little bit. So if you don't have tons of volume, then you're going to say, okay, this doesn't feel like it's feeling those effects quite as much. And then other formats where you're getting to leave decks out, like best of one Triad or Hexad, even more so, you're doing even better. But again, you're kind of benefiting from volume there, as opposed to kind of like truly underlying, like, getting at the roots of things. But yeah, to recap that too, like I personally don't feel like we're at a point where there is where like Archon's not an interesting format. I love playing it. I'm gonna keep playing it. But what you're saying resonates me in that, like, yeah, this is a thing we're gonna need to solve for, right?
hmm And there's a question from the Cloggin. Is there any correlation between power creep and discovery of the new sets? And I think it's fair to ask, like, we're still in the discovery of Grim Reminders. I don't even know what every card does, right? So it's
Mm,
probably premature for me to say, like, yeah, like this is too much power creep. But I think we're seeing like this kind of behavior online and what people are searching for, what they're playing on TCO, and the things that these decks can do. Like I felt in a few of my games that I may have lost or won that like it didn't matter the outcome of the game. Like both me and my opponent were trying to do something unfair, and whoever got to do that unfair thing first was going to win the game. And that's how it felt. And I was guilty of the same thing. I had some ridiculous Mars combos that I was trying to pull off, or something like that. Yeah, what I'm doing is also unfair. So this is not about like other people are doing it and I'm just trying to have fun with a normal deck. Like no, I'm trying to do the same thing. And I haven't liked how that made me feel to
mm.
play those kind of games. But it's very fair to ask like, aren't we still discovering this? And is it possible that we're wrong about this? And that as we discover it more and as we play more against older sets, we do realize that, oh, maybe this is actually quite balanced. Is that still out there for you?
I think so. I mean, I think that we are still in the rediscovery phase and the discovery phase. So we're discovering all of Grim Reminders, and we're rediscovering the old sets in the context of a Grim Reminders world, right? Like this was one of our arguments against set rotation when we were laying those out, right? Like having these older sets available gives those decks a chance to shine, new things to shine. Um, you know, I haven't yet even tried playing an Annihilation Ritual, like to see what that does. And not that one rare from a past set is going to, fix things per se, but it's kind of exemplary of the sorts of things that we could be thinking about, but I don't know if the community has kind of gotten there yet. So I hear
Yeah,
the like, hey, this new thing came in. There's some really potent things in them, uh, and that's like okay, this is noteworthy. That worries me less than like hearing you say like this is not as much fun because it's more swingy. I've used the example before of home run derby versus the small ball, like money ball baseball, right? Like you want it to matter when you steal a base. You don't want to just be counting up home runs at the end of the game. And I wanted to like be able to feel like you can get a good at bat and work for a walk and have that be a thing that matters for the outcome as opposed to just what's your what are you slugging for sort of thing.
yeah. I love that analogy. I do think that's more what I look for. And some people love to watch the home runs, and that's fine.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Different people have different taste for what they want in this game, and not only is that fine, but I'm going to talk about why that's great towards the end of this episode. So like, I'm not just saying that to be like conciliatory. Like that is a theme we are going to hit on the rest of this episode. And so I am not trying to take something away from people that they love in Archon or even Alliance. I want to try to have us think about this from the big picture and what we can do to make this game as popular and as good at it as it can be for as many people as possible.
I like it. I like it.
Um, so I mean, Archon's not dying, right? Like it's it may not be of interest to me, but I have to admit that like this is an absolutely crucial part of this game, like Archon is, where if you take that away, it has too few similarities with other popular card games to be viable, like from a business perspective. And so even if I hated Archon, which I don't hate it, I'm worried about it. Um, it is necessary. It is necessary for this game to continue, and so I want it to be as good of a format as it can be for as long as possible. So I recognize it's not going away, and I am not. I don't want this takeaway to be like the sky is falling and Archon's gone and the game is dying. It's because that's not how I feel at all.
Hmm. Is there? I don't know. We'll get there later. I'm want to ask, like, is there one thing that you would wave a magic wand and change for Archon? Archon specifically?
Yeah, I mean, I thought about this question all week, and I don't have the answer. Like, I'm still going to play it at Vault Tours, but I remember you set up that poll a few months ago now. I think it was at this point
Mm-hmm.
about which formats you preferred, and I think I had put that I preferred Archon over Sealed at that time.
Hmm.
And there is no chance now in my mind that if Ghost Galaxy held Sealed Vault Tour at the same time as Archon Vault Tour, there's no chance I would choose Archon.
Interesting.
So my opinion has shifted, I think, pretty drastically in about 2 months. Um, so I don't know what I would do to change Archon to shift that back for me. It does feel in a lot of ways like Pandora's box. Um, maybe rotation,
Nice.
but that would take a while to fix itself if you go with that route.
Interesting. I mean, it would shake things up. I guess it depends on how it was implemented, right?
Sure.
But I
Listen
think,
to us and the Workcast Reforged from the last 3 weeks if you'd like to hear more about that.
yeah, yeah, totally. Some great ideas there. I don't know. I think for me, like, and again, I'm not worried about where Archon is in this moment. It's more of like let's make sure we're headed in the right direction. And I think something like rotation could give you uh, give you the tools, the mechanisms to keep it moving forward without having it also approaching uh, this dreaded line of solitaire, right? Because that's what you really don't want it
Hmm.
to be. I think Keyforge has a beautiful model for interaction as a racing game. That comes with it some challenges when swings and the amount that you can push forward within a turn is too great. Um, and finding the right balance there is a tough balance to strike, right? So like no shade to the designers or what have you, it's a tough balance to strike, especially if you also have this goal of getting folks to buy the new, right?
Hmm.
And both Winds of Exchange and Grim Reminders, I mean, maybe playing with fire a little bit. They've both have done new things uh, that let you, I guess, change kind of how some fundamental resourcing within the game works, and that it's always a tricky thing to get right, right? So if you're trying to thread the needle on power level, while saying like, also we're going to add cards in graveyard as a resource, or we're going to change the way that you can turn cards from hand into cards on board of the one house um, within a single set, like that can be really tough to strike a balance on. Yeah.
Mm. Yeah.
Hmm.
Well, um, I'd like to move to part two, as I'm referring to it, this
All
one.
right.
And for anyone that's sort of like had us on in the background, tuned out a little bit, this is what I really want you guys to tune into because this is what really changed my attitude on the outlook of this game and the future of this game as I was kind of preparing for this doom and gloom episode that is not going to end up as a doom and gloom episode. This is what I want you guys to think about. I went back to kind of like the roots of Keyforge and some of the reasons that I originally got into this game. And I thought, what better way to kind of look back on that than to hear what Dr. Richard Garfield himself has to say about this game, or what he had to say about it in the past. And I went through a lot of past interviews. Call of Discovery did an amazing interview with him. That was episode 63 of Call of Discovery from 2021, about almost 3 years ago, a little over 3 years ago. He did an Ask Me Anything on Reddit that you can find, and we could drop some of these links in the show notes as well. And then there was another short article that he had on, I believe it was dicebreaker.com. And there's some interesting quotes that I pulled from there. But hearing him talk about his intent with the game, how the game kind of developed when it came out, how players accepted it and played it, it really, really resonated with me as something that I loved about this game. And I will pause here to give a shout out to a few online leagues that are also like kind of embracing this as well, namely Kagi, run on the Sanctimonious Time Shapers Discord server by Murph, originated by Fighting Walloon. Kagi is famously the league Keyforge as Garfield intended, and there is a quote in the Kagi league document, which I thought I saved this quote somewhere on here, but it was somewhat taken a little out of context. But we forgive Murph and Walloon for that because I think essentially what Garfield had said is that he. Shoot. Do you have this quote? Do you remember this one?
I
Thought I had it up here in my notes, but I can't find it now.
I don't have it handy, but you can go find it, and through the magic of editing, we'll make it sound like you had it ready for you, right, ready
Oh,
to
that's beautiful.
go.
Um, I I had this one. Anyway, I'll come back to it as I find it. But
Hmm.
basically, Garfield looked at this game as something where you should be able to bring a deck and become the best player in the world at your deck. And that's what should really be important about the game. And some of the things that he had said that really stuck out to me as I was reading this stuff was, um, in his Ask Me Anything, he said the most exciting thing about online play. Someone asked him specifically about like, is Keyforge going to have online play? And he said the most exciting thing about online play for me comes from the sort of special games you could run, like giant duplicate games where players play the same decks and are scored relative to how well they did in the same matchups. And something like that is somewhat reminiscent of a lot of the formats that have been developed online by players. Emphasis on these formats created by players. Doppelganger, run by Karen. Um, Kagi and Adaptive is a great example of this as well. Of like playing the same matchup and scoring, and whoever can win that matchup gets the win. And plenty of other online formats that have been intended to balance this. And so that's what he said stuck out to him is like the exciting part about online play is like these other unique ways to play this game in a balanced way. And so I loved that answer about that one. Um, he was also asked in the Ask Me Anything what his preference was on a primary format between Sealed and Archon, and he didn't have a preference, which to me is very telling because he said for tournaments he would expect a system where some decks level up and you have tournaments that are only the first time decks and some for level 1 decks, but he's thinking about a system where he's trying to pit decks against each other that are inherently balanced, right? But he will also say in many other interviews that this game is inherently imbalanced. It was supposed to be imbalanced. And that's what was so fascinating to me to like read about this and think about this. Like we think about this and we've talked about this whole conversation at this point about like how imbalanced Archon can be and how, people are looking for these insanely powerful decks. But this game was literally created specifically to have decks that are imbalanced with each other. Like that's the fun of it.
Mm.
And Garfield himself has said his most enjoyable games are not the ones where he's playing some extremely powerful deck and beating somebody. When he's playing an underdog and he's able to take down one of those decks, that's what's the most exciting to him. And I think we have lost some of that, like that, romantic aspect of playing this game that Garfield has talked so openly about so many times in the past.
Yeah, I really, I mean, that resonates a lot with me, though I do have an awful lot of decks and enjoy opening a banger as much as anybody else. Though I will say, as someone who opens an awful lot or has opened an awful lot of AOA, I'm I'm opening these up and not just like, oh, does it have Genka? Does it have Gang or not? Does it have Brig and or Heart of the Forest and moving on? I like love reading these lists, love seeing what's kind of in there for their quirks and some of the warts for it, and almost always prefer being in an underdog situation going into a match, if only for the mental aspect, right? I always think I'm gonna win, but I like I like knowing that I'm outgunned too.
Yeah.
Yeah,
He compared it a lot to like you're playing an online game or a computer game. And most computer games that are like solo player games, you have like an easy, a medium, and a hard. And no one gets satisfaction out of playing on easy and destroying the computer. Like, where's the fun in that, right? You get satisfaction out of putting it on hard and being able to have the skills to navigate through that situation and beat something that is intended to be very difficult for you. And if you're just on this quest to find the best deck you can and just beating everyone to a pulp with it, like, where's the fun in that, right?
yeah. I mean, there's fun in discovering something truly powerful and saying like, hey, I found this thing. Nobody else kind of picked up on it. Let me prove that it's good. That's kind of a very spiky thing to do, to borrow the term. Um, I also think that or I'll turn this back on you. Do you think that this is sort of a rosy but ultimately naive take from Garfield, right? Like, yeah, we have these imbalanced decks by design. We want folks to embrace being the underdog or having to work through some challenges, um, but also we're going to set up tournaments and prize structures where we celebrate coming out on top, uh, and it feels very natural to then say like, well, gosh, of course, folks are gonna gravitate towards the spicy decks, the five peppers,
Mm-hmm.
as it were. Yeah.
I do not think it's naive of him because I think he did learn his lesson from Magic the Gathering. He's gone on the record saying that when he created Magic in the early 90s, he never expected people to be buying the quantity that they did and building these insane decks like they did. And so he's been very open about that. I think this is different because he also built Keyforge with a built-in handicapping system with chains, and not everybody likes chains. That's okay. We can talk about that in a minute. But that system of handicapping is put in place specifically to counteract this. So if somebody wants to buy 1,000 decks, cool. There should be a way that someone that only wants to buy one can still play against that person, have a fair match, and determine who the winner is based on skill in that game or who's better with their deck. One of those things, as opposed to who has the best deck. And in his interview with Call of Discovery, he said you get a lot of good play out of a game where handicaps are embraced by the players, Go being the premier example. And I think over the years, we have not embraced the handicaps that Keyforge offers as much as we used to. And I think a part of that, a large part of that, I think has to do with Ghost Galaxy no longer embracing adaptive as a format. We don't have any kind of format in this game that is supported at the official level that balances these sides. Since Ghost Galaxy has taken it, we've seen Archon and we've seen Alliance, and those are two formats that are pushing you to find the best deck you can before you show up to the tournament. And there is no way to balance the in-game uh, balance of a matchup other than making sure you're careful about which deck you bring. And I think that there is so much more potential in this game that's not being explored by Ghost Galaxy because of that decision to not look at chains or other kind of balancing mechanism that you could implement within a game. When Richard Garfield created this game specifically for this, like he said handicaps made the game challenging for both players. And that's like think about that for a minute. Like, if we go into a game, you and I, and you're bringing a deck that is matched up well against mine, or your deck is just straight up better than mine, you're going to kind of cruise through that game. And if you win, you're like, yeah, well, I had a better matchup. It happens, you know? But if we have these kind of handicaps and balancing measures in place, like chain bidding, or even like adaptive best of one, suddenly this game becomes a challenge for both of us. We're both engaged with the game at a different level than we were without that balancing mechanism. And we can both enjoy that and we can both compete in that kind of at the same time, which is something that I feel in some uphill matchups is missing. Someone might just say, all I have to do is not make any mistakes and play my cards and I'm going to win this matchup because I'm favored. And putting those handicaps in place, I think really challenges both players in a way that makes this immensely more interesting.
Mm. So maybe circling back, not necessarily naive of Garfield per se, but more a reflection of the formats that we're embracing. Is that kind of a fair summary?
So like, do you mean that like,
That there exists this kind of race to the top mentality around decks, and that's there's not really this well how to say
let me try to answer your question with a different quote from Garfield here.
okay.
This is also from the Call of Discovery. Um, he said, like, when asked about the game being intentionally imbalanced, he said there were some players who were trying to find the best decks and beating people with it, which he thinks is a sort of poisonous way to approach the game. And so I don't think he really believed in that system of like, I'm going to buy as many decks as possible. He understood, I think. I don't think it was naivety. I think he understood that it was going to happen and it could happen as long as Archon was considered an official format. But I think to him and his personal interests and my personal interest in gaming and a lot of other personal interests of players out there who like to play in Kagi and other kind of adaptive leagues like that, um, to them and to us, it's not, you know, it's he used the word poisonous, and I'm going to be very careful with this. That was his word. And you and I talked a little bit before, and I felt that like even my behavior in such a intense focus on Archon, finding the best deck on the secondary market, on the stress involved with like these high intense games where it could just come down to draws or something like that. Like the Archon format to me in some ways has felt toxic, and I don't use that word lightly. Like I've kind of felt that for a while now, and what resonated with me with Richard Garfield's quote here is that he used the word poisonous, which is almost basically a synonym of this, and he had kind of used this word to describe it years ago, and I think that's what kind of worries me about the format. And it's not that like no one can enjoy it; it's that Garfield and myself have healthier ways that we can engage with this game. And to this point, it has been up to us, the players, to create that kind of space for us to engage with it in that way. And I want Ghost Galaxy to help me engage with the game in the way that I used to be able to when adaptive was considered an official format. Or I want them to come up with a different format that can help me engage with it in a similar way where I can bring a single deck and have a chance to compete no matter, you know, how much money I paid for that deck or no matter what the SAS is of that deck.
Mm-hmm.
Like, does that kind of answer the question?
I think so, and yeah, I can say I've definitely enjoyed playing Kagi this past season. And I've very much enjoyed a lot of the SASCAP events. So I know that's not your cup of tea that I'll partake in because it's race to the top of the middle is maybe a little bit of a fresh break from race to the top period. But certainly adaptive has been a joy to play this past season. I felt like all of my games were close. They had kind of room to breathe and find like a winner through best decision making in each case. Let's say it. So yeah, answers my question, and I think I like resonates with me on kind of the relationship with decks and deck opening. Like I try very hard whenever I open a deck to look at it for all the things that it could be used for, and not as this just going to be an Archon potential deck. But and maybe this is not great, but I like, oh, is this a SASCAP deck? Is this an adaptive deck? Is this a deck that I'm going to put into a uh, like an auction pool or something? I'm like, one of these days, I'm actually going to make auction pods, drafting deck pods or whatever. But I
That
mean,
would be that would be a blast. That
it would
would be
be
an excellent way.
it would be a blast. But I agree with you too that I would love to see an offering that celebrated decks that were not kind of top of the top. Even if it's sort of this kind of low SAS unsung hero that you brought in Spike Tournament, like I still want to go lower than that and be like, let's give a place for the other decks to shine too. Um, uh,
Yeah.
and I think that really would help promote sort of a healthy relationship with decks and deck opening and all that stuff that you were mentioning. Which
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I can admit to being guilty of. Especially, look at me mid fire sale. Like it felt like very much like not a very healthy way to be interacting with the game and deck opening.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I did the same. I mean, I bought 100 decks from the fire sale. Whenever Worlds Collide first came out, I got a box or two from my local store and just ripped them open
Mm-hmm.
and looking for the best one. And then I found once I was done, I was like, oh, well, like, okay, now I've got one deck that I want to play and 11 that I don't care about, right? And that's
Mm.
not healthy either. And that's why I still have two-thirds of a box of Grim Reminders sitting right next to me because I only got two displays that I'm opening from my pledge, and I've gotten through a little over one so far because I found that it's healthier for me to open those up and play them sealed, or I'm not looking for that like dopamine rush of like finding the best one
Mm.
because I realized that that was not healthy for me personally.
Mm. It reminded me of a fun story. When Worlds Collide was released, I went down to one of the game stores in my town, one of the local game stores, and I bought a display of Worlds Collide. And the people at the counter were like, "You want 12?" like a very question mark. I was like, "Yeah, I'll take 12." And they gave it to me, and that was it. That was all they had. The next person who came in, they were like, "Yeah, sorry, that guy bought them all."
That whale over there.
Oh yeah, that guy bought them all. So I mean, they were definitely on the like, this is a game that you should treat like a board game as opposed to a collectible card game, which was interesting. I mean, but not where I was at at the moment.
Yeah.
Not where, I mean, I can't
Yeah.
claim to be there now, certainly with the number of decks that I own. But I'd like to think that I get a enjoyment out of the vast majority of them. Yeah.
Yeah. So the quote from Garfield that's in the Kagi rules doc, I found it is actually, he said, "I often like picking a deck and trying to win with it rather than picking a deck with the best chance of winning." And that quote is in the Kagi doc, but it is not something he was saying specifically about um, adaptive. He was saying it more of, actually, I think I had the article up a couple days ago. I did at least, but it was more of just about like his preference and style of gaming. Like what he enjoyed out of games, and just kind of hearing him talk about what he enjoys as a player. It started to like open my mind up again to like why I fell in love with Keyforge to begin with was like these
Mm.
different ways of playing this game. Um, and so that's why it was such a joy to like go and read and listen to all of this stuff that he had said. And there was another quote from the Call of Discovery episode where I, to show you how serious I am about this topic, he used the word pilot, and I will use the word pilot as well because Richard Garfield used it, and so I will not slander him, and I will use the word here. This is a question on the importance of the pilot of a specific deck. And he said one of the things I really wanted to see was players becoming the best in the world at their particular deck, the one they happen to be playing. And the one they happen to be playing, I think, really is the emphasis here because it's like I happen to be playing a deck that I just opened, and I happen to be playing a deck that was the first deck I ever got, and I want to be the best in the world at this deck. And there's something like truly romantic about this game that I think brought people in to say like you can have this emotional attachment to this deck. You have a story behind it about where you found it and how you've played it, and and that's why I think a lot of people reacted negatively to Alliance because it took away that romantic element of like this Archon and what it means to me,
Hmm.
and like it's very nerdy, but like I think it's also extremely relevant to why people love this game.
Hmm. I mean, I think I've said before that what I fell in love with initially about the game was, yeah, it felt like I was back to when I first started playing Magic, and I was throwing decks together with what I had, not going down to the game store and buying four of what I needed to make some list. I was like, yeah, I've got bad pennies in here. Of course, I got bad pennies in here because that's all I had at home. I threw them in the deck, and now I'm playing bad pennies. Uh,
Yeah,
so which is a lot of fun. And now I'm gonna like figure out how to make this bad penny be the best bad penny it can be and win some games. Yeah,
make
totally.
that bad penny even badder.
Even better, the baddest penny.
That's what they should have named Rad Penny.
the
Is
ba- the
is
the baddest penny.
the baddest penny? That would have been good. Um, I have one more quote. I think just one more. I have so many that I could go through that I've really enjoyed reading from Richard Garfield. This was in the Dicebreaker interview, which I will link as well. He said players involved in testing the game found it hard to accept that decks couldn't be adjusted, and they would dismiss the game before even sitting down to play. Many of those that did give Keyforge's gameplay a go would then complain that the game was unfair if they lost, quickly blaming the deck they were given instead of accepting the typical curve of learning a new game. How many times have we had that experience? Like I've done this many times. Like I lose a game and it's because oh well, that deck sucked, or I try to bring new people into the game and like oh well this is dumb. I just opened a bad deck and why is this fun? And I think those kind of attitudes, it takes some time to get through that. And like he talks about the learning curve of the game, and there is a bigger learning curve than I think people give it credit for, because when you play a single game with it, if you're used to CCGs and constructed games, you just think I have to deal with a bad deck. Like that doesn't make any sense. That's wild. But it was a revolutionary idea, and to go along with it, I think are a lot of the balancing mechanics that we've talked about that Garfield has intended and talked about that really lets you discover and dig deeper into this game. Um, that to me is, was it resonated with me because that's a comment I've heard from many people I've tried to teach.
I like that. I like that a lot.
So I did say that I thought that was my last one. It's not my last one. This is a perfect way to wrap a bow on what Garfield has been talking about and what he built this game around. And this was also in the Call of Discovery. One of the most exciting things for me with Keyforge has been this idea that people have a very difficult time telling other people what the best way to play is. And so we've talked about all these different formats. Like I told you I was not going to like tell you not to play Archon anymore, tell you not to play Alliance anymore, you know, tell you not to play Adaptive. Like there are so many different ways people love to play this game, and we need to embrace more of them. During the hiatus, we had a lot of players create leagues and formats that are totally beloved now. Like Nordic Hexad's been around for I think almost 5 years now, like which is crazy. That's a player created format. Exchange is one of my favorites. That was a player created format. Forget the name of the user on like the Keyforge Lounge server that came up with this idea years ago. We've played a number of leagues with Exchange, and so there's these like different ways you can play this game. And what's helped me kind of like come to grips with this Archon problem, like what the deal is with Archon, was that I can play this game however I want to play it because that's how we've been doing it since we started. Like I don't need to just play Archon. It just so happens that that is the only format that Ghost Galaxy has really given me to this point. And yeah, I'm not happy about that, but there's a lot that I can do about it. There's a lot that players have done about it. Running online leagues of a format that you're interested in. Like huge shout out to Murph Fudginator picking up Kagi from Fighting Walloon. Like I don't know what I would do without that league. Like that league is everything to me. The Keyforge team event that's just starting up right now, like props to everybody involved with organizing that one because they're putting together a team event where you have the classic Archon, Triad, and Adaptive. And I'm lucky enough to be playing Adaptive in that. And so it gives a little bit of something for everybody. And I'd be remiss to not mention Aurora because Aurora spent years developing different formats to try to balance this game in a way like that. Adaptive isn't quite called to her, but she wants to build something, find something that that does, and I just have so much respect for that. And I love that like there are players out there thinking of ways to do this. Karen also like
Mm-hmm.
how many formats has Karen invented? Like I'm guessing literally dozens or more. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
that's incredible. And I just if Ghost Galaxy is not going to build these formats for us or support these formats for us, then we're going to build them ourselves. And that's how I'm going to continue to enjoy this game. Hopefully, I can still go to Vault Tours, and hopefully in the future those Vault Tours feature events like Adaptive. But until then, I'm still going to play these formats, and I hope, and I'm putting myself on the spot here, that I hope that I'm going to be able to run some of these with the sloppy lab work as a way to say like, yeah, like I'm putting my money where my mouth is. I'm going to play this game how I want to play it. I'm going to hopefully find a group of people that want to play it how I do, and just keep enjoying the game and not worry about whether or not Archine's dying or the game's dying. Like we love this game. Like why are we so worried about it dying when we can just keep playing and enjoying it however we want to enjoy it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally. I mean, we saw lots of vibrant play happening, as you mentioned. During the hiatus times. I'm not worried about that. I think, yeah, I'd love to see some of these formats get picked up too, at the Voltora level, at the Premier event level. I mean, Adaptive Short could work very well. There are other more creative options, and yeah, love the shout out to Aurora too. I mean, and this is tough because folks have said for a long time we want this unicorn of a format that doesn't feature chains, doesn't swap decks, is best of one, and it's hard, but there's been a lot of cool experimentation that sticks to most of those, some of those, all of those, um, and it's tough, but I think the game would very much benefit. I agree with you from having something like Adaptive Short playing into full adaptive in the top cut, as an example, being a thing that we support at Premier events. And yeah, question from the chat too, if this is something you think just for locals for Premier events. I mean, I I don't have a particularly big hang up or worry or concerns about fragmenting the player base. I think that was one of the motivations for consolidating around the formats that we have now. Like, I think it's a nice sentiment, like a great sentiment, very well intentioned. Um, I don't know that it's needed. I don't think that having these other formats, you know, in existence, is necessarily pulling folks focus, fragmenting player base. I think it's worth a nod to have these and to celebrate the fact that there are ways to play the game that give decks that are not your best, best three, best five, best one, a place to shine. Yeah.
Yeah. And you talked about how Aurora specifically has been trying to find that unicorn format, and it reminded me of this of a comic that I'm sure you're familiar with. Someone says like there's 14 different programming languages that are intended to be universal, and he's like, I'm going to finally do it. I'm going to make the universal one, and it's going to be like we're not going to need these other 14 programming languages ever again. And then a week later, there are now 15 programming languages that are considered to be
Oh, the
like universal.
yeah. Yeah, we have
Yeah, and
the
so
group of
like
standards for sure.
exactly, yeah, like we don't need to have the unicorn. Like we can all enjoy something. I'd love to support that adventure and that quest to find that unicorn. But let's not hinge all of our hopes on the game on finding that.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And a good question too. Uh, is there a change you would be hoping to see from GG this year? I'll say for myself, like, no, I don't expect them to make mid-season changes to organized play schedule. I feel like it would be super unlikely to have a shift of course, and I wouldn't really hope to see it. I mean, at least not, hey, now the Dallas or the was it Dallas Voltor is going to run adaptive instead of Archon. That's not going to happen. Wouldn't expect it. Wouldn't ask for it.
Mm-hmm.
I would love to see like other formats added as officially recognized ones that could be used or could be honored at your store champs or what have you. Like that feels good. Like I don't know. I mean, embrace the chaos, man. Like it's kind of like core to Chaos, Chaos Keyforge. Um, Chaos is Keyforge Chaos. Nice. I coined that term.
Yeah, I agree with you that I don't expect them to make changes this year. I would love to see like a written verbal support from Ghost Galaxy of these formats that we're talking about. Like put adaptive back on the website and say like, yeah, we're gonna try to do this in 2024. Because again, they just released the Volt Tour schedule today. I don't expect them to change that. Like they have their whole KFC World Championship already being planned for this fall. I don't expect them to change that and suddenly add adaptive to that. That's unrealistic, and that's fine. But I want them to acknowledge it, and I want them to, look into this for the future to say like, all right, 2024, maybe we'll have some smaller level events with adaptive. Maybe we'll add it to the Vault Tour slate, at least in one stop or two. And I just want to see some acknowledgement of the community and what we're looking for out of this game.
Mm-hmm. Right on. Right on.
So, um, so I kind of like I want to wrap this up with like a call to action for two groups, and I've kind of already stated it, but just to summarize, like what I'm really want to get at here for us. My ask of the players is to detach yourself from this mindset of like find the most powerful deck out there and just beat my opponents with it. Also, kind of try to detach yourself from the thinking of these cards are unfair and too strong and broken and things like that, because there are ways to play the game to kind of just ignore or mitigate the fact that some cards like Ecto Charge can get you a free key. If you're playing adaptive, that's baked into your bidding process. Or if you're playing another format, uh, like Hexad, you can ban the Ecto Charge if it's something that you're really worried about. Like try not to focus like the negativity on this stuff and using the word that Garfield used, like that poisonous nature of like just trying to find the best deck. Try to like step back a little bit, find what you enjoy with the game, um, and in formats that don't really care about how strong your opponent's deck is. If that's what you're into, if you're worried about the power creep of Archon, like find something you enjoy, right? Like I'm doing this now, and I'm coming to peace with some of the things that I don't like about it, but I'm still finding the things that I love about this game and enjoying them.
Hmm. Right on. Right on. Right on. Well, I mean, keep doing it, man. I'd be
I'm
real lonely
trying.
if I was just talking on myself.
You haven't missed an episode yet, so
Yeah.
um, I also want to have some requests to Ghost Galaxy as
Okay.
well, and to highlight this, like embrace and support at least one format at high level play. Again, probably isn't going to be this year, but embrace a format that lets players bring their own deck and compete regardless of the power level of the decks involved. And they always talk about agency, right? Like we made Alliance because we wanted to give players agency. I want them to give us agency in the game experience to say like I can bring whatever deck I want and still be able to play a competitive, fair game. Like there's already a known format in adaptive that can do that. So I want to see Ghost Galaxy really embrace that part of the community. And I also just kind of in general, I want Ghost Galaxy to lead players to aspects of this game that aren't heavily focused on finding a deck that can just try to destroy your opponent as quickly and as heavily as possible, like they have with Archon and Alliance. Like those are the two formats, and I think that's why the community is so focused negatively on what's happening in the direction of the game, is because those are the two formats that we're given. That if we were given adaptive, like I have so many Grim Reminders decks that I'd love to play in adaptive. Like the set seems made for adaptive. Like people have said that Winds of Exchange felt like it was designed for Alliance, and I can kind of see that. Grim Reminders to me was designed for adaptive. Like there's so many decision points in a game of Grim Reminders. Like what you're doing with your discard pile, what you're taking back, when you're doing it, all this stuff. Like there's when you're discarding things. It was just like the number of decision points have skyrocketed this set, which is incredible to see, and it's why I loved it right out of the box. And I just want to see like Ghost Galaxy really push these kind of formats that let us explore that without just trying to find the best deck that can win in 3 turns every time.
Hmm. And good question from Orion here too. That availability of folks who are kind of looking for those same sorts of experiences can be tricky. I think I think part of that is a reflection of the formats that have been offered at high level play, and then maybe even pushed at uh,
Yeah.
pushed in the local level. Though to be fair, I think it's always been tougher to find someone ready to jam an adaptive match or a sealed game on TCO than an Archon game, right? Like it's just easier to sit down, plus press new game, and find a player who's willing to play it Archon with you, right? I don't think
Hmm.
that's gonna
Yeah.
change necessarily, though. I haven't. I'm gonna be honest. I haven't really looked for someone to play sealed with on a random game on TCO in a long time.
Yeah. I know Not Tonight does it a lot.
She does, yeah. And I play
And
sealed. Well, I think a lot of sealed that happens on TCO is folks who are either Archon, getting an Archon matrix, setting it up offline TCO rather, or opening a
mhm,
deck and then playing that as Archon
yeah,
on TCO. Because I was looking at
we
some
do that a lot.
numbers. We did a lot. I was looking at numbers from that that I think Sizox put out at one point, and and it showed a big jump between from sealed to Archon in terms of what's been popular. And I was thinking about it afterwards and like, you know what? I bet, well, just anecdotally looking at my own behavior, like a lot of my games on TCO end up being sealed games played as Archon because I opened a deck offline or what have you. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm up for adaptive games all the time online, and I don't usually set up tables for that because if I have a window where I want to play a game of Keyforge, like you're gonna find a game fast with Archon. If I put up an adaptive game, I admit like I don't do that because like I might wait 10 minutes to find a table, and by that point I can't really
And then you're
fit a
in
whole
for
game in.
a decently
Yeah.
lengthy match potentially too. Yeah.
Yeah, and this goes back to, what we said earlier, which is that like we're not trying to, get rid of Archon, right? Like Archon is needed for this game to survive. It's the most popular format for a reason. It's just that we need something else for players like me that are getting tired of, the exhausting way of approaching Archon and competing in Archon really.
Hmm. Do you think that your feelings toward Archon have shifted a little bit as you've gotten more decks? Like, do you think there's anything to that, or
Oh, I think my interest in Archon definitely spiked as I got more decks.
oh, interesting. Okay.
When I had a smaller collection, in theory, I was interested in it. I didn't really play at any Vault Tours like pre hiatus. Um, I didn't have a collection that would have let me compete with that anyway.
Hmm.
Um, and then as I acquired more and more decks during the hiatus, I became more interested in Archon.
Hmm.
But I think that's telling, right? Like that's telling because I recognized it was a format that you needed to really search for decks, and like I specifically sought out some powerful decks, and I never used to make like large purchases for decks. I'm not sure if you remember this, but like
I don't recall.
uh, I'm pretty cheap, right? Dark Tidings came out, and I paid $100 for a deck that I still love and play all the time in Anakim. And then during the hiatus before Woe, well, not the hiatus, but right before Woe came out, once we knew what Woe was, I was in search of a really good deck that I thought could compete in Archon with Woe,
Yeah.
which was VC, which is my World's Collide deck with 20 some C. It's got a lot of great C in every house. It's got ways of like redundancy of being able to set up a game plan and do it consistently. And it did pretty well against Woe. And I spent a lot of money on that deck more than I ever had before on a single deck. And so as I spent more money, I admit, like I was like, okay, yeah, like Archon's not that bad, but I'm one of the people that was fortunate enough to be able to spend hundreds of dollars on decks. Like, what if I'm not spending that money? Like, how am I going to feel about Archon? And I have to admit and recognize that yeah, I liked Archon because I was investing more in this game.
Hmm.
And if I couldn't have done that, I would still be that player that didn't really connect with Archon as much as I did then.
Hmm. I asked because I've heard it go the other way. I've heard folks who I don't want to, yeah, I'm not going to call anybody out, but I've heard folks who were really interested in Archon until they started spending a lot on decks, and then kind of felt like, yeah, now that I'm on the other side of the good matchup, bad matchup, who's the underdog scenario, it's less exciting. It's
I
less
think
less exciting to go in feeling like you are the favored person often than
okay,
yeah.
interesting. Okay, so that's slightly different. I was going to say that that kind of is why I maybe where I'm at now, like why I say I use the word spiked. My interest in Archon spiked because I'm obviously down on it right now,
Hmm.
and maybe I've crossed that threshold of like, okay, like yeah, I've spent the money on it and I've done this for a bit, and now it's like less interesting to me. It's not because I have a deck that's better and I'm no longer the underdog. I'm still the underdog. Um, it's just I think I'm just tired of it. I think I want to just go back to playing the decks that I love and not spend the time and money trying to find something that's gonna be good against the field. Like that's less interesting to me than saying, I love this deck. I'm great at this deck. I want to play this deck for the rest of time and be the best in the world at this deck. Like that to me is way more interesting. And as I've kind of like read up this week and I've kind of like revisited in myself, like what do I love about this game and why did I get into it? That's what I keep coming back to is like certain decks um, I have that affinity for them. Everyone has affinity for certain decks. And wouldn't it be great if you could just play those decks at high level competitive play and still have a chance instead of having to play something that you don't find as fun, but you know it gives you the best chance of winning?
Hmm. Hmm. Okay. Well, uh, well.
Let me address Data Forge Stream's question. So he says, I agree that adaptive does allow you to bring anything, which is a huge advantage, but do Kagi numbers compared to other leagues show that it's not as popular as other formats and thus doesn't make sense for big events? I think that's a fair question. And I think that's why we haven't seen them at Vault Tours, and that's why Ghost Galaxy maybe ended the support for it. I think there are ways to do it well and to do it right. But I think what I'm trying to get at here is that there's not going to be that unicorn format that's for everybody. And I think this game is versatile enough that we and Ghost Galaxy should embrace that versatility to cast a wider net. Because I think there's a lot of players who started out in this game and quickly went away from it because they felt it was pay to win.
Hmm.
If you told them you could bring any deck you want and you could still compete at the highest level event, I think those players may not have left and they might actually come back. And I think we're seeing, a lot of the online community in the doom and gloom situation here. If you told them that they don't have to worry about, losing to an ecto charge every single game, they might stick around longer. And so I think this is really about uh, finding the formats that will attract the widest player base overall. I think that's in the best interest of the game. And, I think, heck, maybe I'll apply for a vault tour next year at a large store in Pittsburgh and say, I'm only going to do it here if you let me run adaptive. And if 20 people show up, that's fine. Like it's, it is what it is. Like, I think it's worth giving a shot. I think it's what this game was founded on. And I think it's worth taking that risk by Ghost Galaxy to say like, let's see what we can do with this.
Well, I do think it's an important enough question to experiment with, at least. So I agree with you on that. I mean, hey, it'd be pretty cool if you ran a tournament in Pittsburgh. Quick Draw, I'd come down. How about that? You'd have at least two, at
Well,
least two.
I'll have two, and You'll get some pizza out of it. I can
There you go.
guarantee you that if you did that.
There you go. And I think it's fair though. I mean, it's been adaptive has always been less popular, and it's hard to say if that's a chicken and the egg sort of a thing. Less popular because it was pushed less popular because it was not reacted to as strongly by the players. There are definitely hangups that folks have had about handing their deck across the table to be shuffled by another person.
Yeah.
Like joking about eating players' cards aside, and incidentally, you could make the cards edible. I'm just saying that we're going to be printing deck copies. You could just make them edible. Let them eat the eat the card. Don't eat the yummy cards. Okay, don't eat the yummy.
Except Hallowfest. Hallowfest tastes irresistible.
Eat the
And
bracken on site. They're actually made with a specific type of ink that makes them tastier than
it
the
is
other card.
true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, folks have hangups about handing their deck across the table. They have hangups about chains generally, and I think those are things that I don't know needs at least a good PR push around, if not some support from the top down to get folks on board with. That's probably true, but I don't think that they're necessarily insurmountable. And even if it ends up being a less popular than Archon, less popular than Sealed, I don't know. I just think that kind of what you're getting at. I think it promotes a very healthy relationship with the game, which is kind of worth having in the mix.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And JT, I'm going to make you stay up past your bedtime tonight because there's another great question in the chat from Floximal. And he asks, would new players be more intimidated by Adaptive than Archon? I can tell you with experience from my local store and the people that play there, who are very good players, by the way. They are not new players, but most of them don't go to Vault Tours. Yes, they are more intimidated by Adaptive than Archon, no question. I don't see Adaptive as that entry level format for people. Yes, it's like more fair and balanced for someone that doesn't have. I think at your local store, like you have social etiquette to not bring your favorite Archon deck and smash your locals with it. I don't think anyone does that. Um, so you play sealed at your locals, and this is why sealed is so important to this game. Like, and it's why also people were very frustrated that just regular open a deck and play it sealed was not listed as an official format on Ghost Galaxy's website. Still kind of isn't. Let's not get into that one yet. But sealed is such a crucial part of this game, and that's where you get like pull people in to the format. Like I've gotten my brother and his girlfriend in with sealed. We had like I think I would say five new players, new being either like lapsed player or never played before. Five new players come to our Grim Reminders release event for a sealed open one and play it. And by all accounts, I think everyone had a great time. And so that sealed has to be at the format. But about your question of adaptive being intimidating or being accessible, adaptive, in my opinion, like I'm a competitive gamer. Like I see adaptive as the pinnacle of competitiveness in this game.
Hmm.
Uh, I don't see Archon as that. Archon is the most popular, but if you want to talk about skill testing, to me, it is about like challenging both players every single game and being able to rise to that challenge. If you're playing Archon and you run into all the right matchups, you could win. And that's just it, right? Or if you bring the best deck, if theoretically the best deck existed, it doesn't. But if it did, that's to me is not the pinnacle of competitiveness. Like to me, adaptive is a very highly competitive format. I don't expect it to be played at local stores casually on a Saturday afternoon with some of your local players. Like it's different than that. I think it has a different purpose.
Hmm. I would hope it was played at least sometimes at locals. I mean, you'd like to see.
I'd love to.
Yeah.
I would do it every week if my locals are listening. I know some of them do listen. If you hear me, let's play some adaptive at our locals. Like I'm game at any time.
Yeah, and only because I kind of prescribe to this idea that the premier event system, high level organized play is sort of a marketing scheme for the game at large, and I feel like you kind of need to have folks playing the same sorts of games at their locals that they're aspiring to play in Vault Tours and Worlds and what have you. But I don't think it's hey, there's a new person showing up tonight, let's play adaptive. No, this is the format you fold in once everybody's got some reps, you've opened a deck, you've played it, and now the players who are kind of getting their bearings are starting to say like, yeah, but now I'm noticing there's this imbalance in like where to go from here. It's kind of like, oh, from here we go to one of the formats where there is a balancing mechanism baked in, and it doesn't matter that I happen to have a better deck than you per se, right?
Yeah, right on.
Hmm. Okay, cool. Well, anything you want to say in closing there, or maybe we can see what our sponsors have for this.
Let's go to the sponsors.
All right, cool. Well, folks, this episode of Bottom of the Beaker was brought to you by Down to Size Consignment, your trusted outfitter for whatever adventures the Crucible tosses your way. Bring those 2 sizes too small rocket boots or smarty pants, and while you're here, buy or trade your way into looking like a million beam bucks. Whatever you're wearing, make it down to size. So, thank you very much, Down to Size Consignment. Love it. Folks, I want to let you all know that Bottom of the Beaker is recorded live Wednesday evenings at twitch.tv/sloppylabwork. You can find recordings of our past shows and other streams over at youtube.com. We are at sloppylabwork over there. And for the very best content, 34? No, 57 times distilled and scraped from the bottom of the beaker. You can search for that very phrase in your podcatcher of choice, and we'll be there to play with you regardless of the format, and maybe even do a deck swap and chain Benny after. Who knows? Yeah, thanks so much to Quick Draw 3457, little Q, little D, if you please. Thanks, Quick Draw. Any final words to the folks getting off at the last audio stop?
Well, last word to you, JT. Thank you for letting me get on my soapbox this week anyway. I appreciate you humoring me, and everyone that's still stuck around through all of this. Just thank you guys. I really hope that you take this to heart and find the parts of Keyforge that you love, and don't let the negativity kind of seep in and ruin your enjoyment of the game. Also, come join us in the Sloppy Lab Work server. We have a channel called Reckless Experimentation dedicated to finding different formats and ways to play this game that we all love. So if you come over and join us, another link in the show notes for JT to add in there, the link to the server. Yeah, come join us, and yeah, just thank you guys for tuning in. And last but certainly not least, stay sloppy.
All right, stay sloppy indeed. Yeah, a little bit of a reflective one this time around, but it was good. I appreciate the candor as always. I think it was fun, and hope folks enjoyed. Yeah. So, should we play a game?
I would love to. Do you want to play a sealed adaptive game?
I had a very late night last night, a very late night, most likely tomorrow, with JDG playing.
All right. We'll play Psy then. That's fine.
Okay, we'll play Psy. Yes, podcast done recording. Going to stop the recording. Thank you for the reminder. Over there, readjust the layout, because that's the thing you have to do when you hit the record button and stop record button. Bum, bum, bum. Though we are still streaming. Let's see. Adjusting layout and being very entertaining while adjusting. Oh my gosh. Come on. 844 pixels. Nailed it. Perfect. First try. Okay. We have a question. Do we have a question?
There's too many big words in this question, Cloggin. I'm sorry.
we got silent for 5 seconds reading. All right. I'll read it out loud. Did GG hire a community organizer of a dead game, only continued on by the community netrunner, in order to build infrastructure and processes for when Keyforge is no longer being made or supported? I don't know. I mean, I think it's kind of a reasonable thing to do, to be building, reusable components and these sorts of things. And I mean, I don't know, that's kind of core to Artiforge itself. I prescribe a lot of goodwill to them still, though, I think you got to acknowledge that they're 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 building for modularity and reuse as they go, and can't really fault them for that. But I don't. I hope that it's not intentional. Don't believe it'd be with that sort of in mind. If that was the question, yeah.
I don't understand the question remotely.
I think the question is sort of like, was this is this sort of a is Keyforge maybe sort of like a launch pad for getting some of these infrastructure pieces in place in a way that lets you build the systems with kind of some funding baked in
I
for
mean,
Endeavor.next.
I'm sure they have big plans that they want to do, but I think the main point I wanted to emphasize today is that I don't actually care. Like I want them to support the game that I love, but like we can and have supported this during the hiatus, during as a dead card game for years. Um, I've been playing Star Wars CCG for 27 years, and that game's been dead for 23 years. So, um, Keyforge is going to be the same way, and it's going to be because of the community.
See, this is a foreign thing to me personally. I've been playing Magic for a long time, and I think as a longtime Magic player, you kind of take for granted that you can like go to a new town and like there's people playing Magic, or like it's been going for 30 plus years, it's going to keep going, and like you just kind of get that as a thing you take for granted. Like, oh, there's a cool new game. It's just going to be a cool new game or a cool old game at some point. Um, and I hope that's the case for Keyforge. Certainly for me, like when I look at a game and I'm like, this is going to be not just a lifestyle game, it's going to be my lifestyle game. Like, I'm not looking at a game and being like, I hope I get 3 good years out of it. Like, no, I'm hoping that Keyforge is around for a long time. I don't know like all the facets to what that means in the eventualities, but that's kind of my take, and I hope that's what they're planning for too. But
Yeah. Um, so just to go back to the Star Wars CCG, I actually played in a Star Wars CCG tournament on Saturday at my
mhm.
LGS.
Yeah.
We had 9 players playing a cube, and one, two, three, four, I think, four of those players are new, like
Oh, cool.
new to the game. Like we have a pretty established group here in Pittsburgh that plays it, but like the fact that this game's been dead for 23 years and we can still get new players to come to events is insane. And it's a testament to the community. And Keyforge is going to be the same way.
Hmm.
So I'm here for the long haul.
Interesting. I mean, I plan to be here for the long haul. I certainly hope that the folks running the game are in it too. Um, but I don't know that if they weren't, it would change anything for me specifically. Like I'll run my own personal TCO server just to fire up games
Yeah.
for events or whatever if it came to that. I don't know. You mentioned you might want to run some events on the through the Sloppy Labworks server. I've been thinking more and more about running some large individual events. Like we joke about the name Dark Amber Vault Tours, featuring a
It's a
few,
great name.
It's just like too good of a name not to do almost. you know,
Yeah.
the brand, the marketing does itself. But run a handful of those, and then you have a community to run large event series.
Yeah.
Could be a lot of fun.
I mean, you remember the joke during the hiatus, when this game was dead? We're like, the game's dead. There's too many legs.
Yeah.
Like we're like, why aren't you playing in this league? Like, I'm in too many leagues. We were literally playing too many leagues, and we could not join other leagues that were being started up. And this is a game that was allegedly dead,
Yeah.
right? Like, people are going to play this game how they want to play it. It's
Yeah.
great.
It's interesting too. I mean, we definitely lost folks who, or have lapsed folks who were really itching for some sort of organized, high level competitive play scene. I mean, I think a game like Keyforge is always going to be a a social outlet for some, a competitive outlet for some, and a mix of the two
Mhm.
for most, right?
Yeah.
And whatever else that might mean. Yeah, and I guess yeah, you just gotta feel good about where that mix lands for you and what's currently being offered. Um, yeah, yeah,
Um, yeah, Murph says there's still too many legs, and I don't want to start a sloppy leg until one or two of the other ones that's going on slows down. Like we might like take some signups for something, but
Maybe.
I don't know if we'll start it like right in the middle of team event and
Oh no,
NKFL all starting back up. Like
now's not the time for something like that.
now's not the time.
At least not for a new voice in the. There's a lot of things going on. Let's support them for sure. And like I couldn't. I'm in too many currently myself. I couldn't. I've been like I very begrudgingly joined the. Not begrudgingly is not the right word. I very warily joined the team event series, just with worries over time, because
Yeah.
of the other leagues that I'm doing.
Yeah.
You know,
I mean, not tonight was like, JT, you want to play? And you're like, I don't know. And then Crusader's like, hey, JT, you want to play? And you're like, all right, I'm in. Crusader, let's go.
yeah. I mean, it wasn't ad. I don't know. It was like I want to. Don't know if I can. Yeah, don't
But
know if
my
I can.
point was, when Not Tonight was like, hey, you want to play? You're like, I don't think so, not tonight. And then Crusader was like, oh, Crusader's playing? All right.
I mean, who can resist Crusader? I don't know what to say. Yeah, yeah, it's true.
Um, and then of course we get paired up first round.
Oh, the fix is in, and then I think
Seriously,
ABR folks got paired up too. Man,
they did. Yeah,
they're front
we're
loading
all in
all
the
the
same.
collusion, front loading
We're
all
in the
the
same
collusion.
group. They put all of those evil teams wearing the same T-shirts in one pod
Yes,
together. Just get
yes,
rid of as many as we can at one time.
yeah. The worry, and we joke totally. There's no worries about collusion, I'm sure, but it was just funny. Yeah, yeah.
Funny and sad.
ABR coming out. ABR is definitely coming out. Quick on the heels of ABR 10. ABR 11 is going to be uh, there. So we'll have ABR, we'll have NKFL, we'll have Kaggies taking signups tomorrow, I think Murph said.
Oh,
And then
really? Whew.
team events. So things are in swing. I think KFPL's firing back up. I forget if there are the specifics around that too. But I mean, it's bustling. It's bustling and thriving. Yeah.
Uh, do we even want to play a game tonight? It's already 11.
Let's play. I've been thinking about this. Let's play. Have you heard of Armageddon for chess?
No, I don't think so.
So chess has its own take on chain bidding, but instead of bidding for chains like you do in Keyforge, you bid for time, right? So how much time you've got on your clock, as it were. And the really interesting thing there too is you're bidding for the right to play the black pieces. The white pieces are generally considered better, but the person playing black also gets the win if the game ends in a draw. So you are burdened with the responsibility of winning if you're playing the white
Hmm.
pieces. Um,
How does the bidding on time come into play then?
you let's say I forget what it is. Let's say we both start with 5 minutes, and you'd say I'm going to bid 3 minutes 40 seconds, and then if you bid lower than me, then you get to play the black pieces with 3 minutes 40 seconds, right?
If you asked me to bid on black in chess and we're starting at 5 minutes, I'd be like, I'll start the bidding at 2 hours.
uh,
I'm I am so rusty at chess that if we played a blitz game and you had 5 minutes and I had 2 hours, I don't know if I'd win.
I don't think you would. No, just kidding.
Yeah.
I'm just kidding.
I mean, I believe you.
Not if it
I
was on
totally believe
stream,
you.
quick draw. Not if it was on stream.
No, if it was on stream, I would definitely lose. But um,
Yeah, but
I
no,
have some chess trophies though from when I was a kid. So
you're a
like
dead
I was
ringer.
no slouch.
Dead ringer over
I
there. Yeah.
had to practice, that's all.
Okay. Um, where was I going with that?
Yeah, how are we supposed to bid on time and TCO?
Nope. I was gonna say there's this really cool time bidding format, and I'm gonna take inspiration from the name Armageddon. And let's play to one key, but the person who loses the bidding, no, the person who wins the bidding also loses if after X number of turns. We can decide how many turns you think. There's no key forged.
This sounds like it's going to take longer than a regular game.
You think so?
It also sounds like you're going to bring your Futurist Past Ecto Charge deck.
But you could bid on that deck. I don't know. You could bid on that deck.
Wait, what are we bidding though?
I don't know. Let's play one game. First key wins. Bring whatever you want.
Okay, bring whatever you want. All right. We said we're going to have fun with this game, so let's have fun with this game.
I'm gonna play a namesake deck, an innocent namesake deck. Quick draw.
All right, Grim Reminders namesake.
Yes. I don't have
All
any
right.
non-Grim Reminders namesake decks that include Futures
I will
Past and Ecto
I will
Charge.
bring okay, I will bring a Grim Reminders namesake deck that is not good,
That is
just because I
not
want to
good.
play it more. I haven't played it. I've played it like a couple times and it's pretty bad, but
You're
let's
gonna
do it.
shame me into bringing a worse deck now, so we have a.
No, bring whatever deck you want, JT. This is what we just talked about for 2 hours. Just bring whatever deck you want, right?
Okay.
All right. Are you going to start the game so that I can blast the siren into your ears this week instead of mine?
I have this site muted, as most
Okay.
reasonable people probably do.
Well, how am I going to know when my game is starting then?
Uh,
I never
okay.
imported the deck. Let me find it. I have to import it. Yeah. It's
Okay. I'm gonna play then instead, not the namesake deck.
all right. So I have sufficiently shamed you.
You have. I'm playing a deck that actually one of the villains traded to me. Son of one of the villains actually at KFC. So first time playing it on the Crucible, but played a number of play by post games with it. Um, features Dark Depths, Double Beam of Forgetting, and a Forgotten Guardian to get that Dark Discovery
Oh.
back. So
Well, I feel like Dark Discovery is going to take a very long time to get your first key, right?
we shall see. Very. Okay, so we're going to play
All right.
Idle Ifura of the Deadlands.
I'm going to play capital Q quick draw 3457 of the hut.
For a second, I thought you had actual. Oh, this is Clocks, right? This is the Clocks deck.
This is the clocks, yeah.
Nice. Can't play this hand, doesn't have a turn one key. Okay. Hey, what happened to my background?
That happened to me a few days ago.
Hmm. All right, let me turn off this one. This one. All right, rolling with this guy. I like it. Clear my cache, nerd. I don't think it's my cache, man.
I think it's a TCO issue. I had that same issue a couple days ago. Oh, it's my turn.
Is it like not finding the image? Weird.
Yeah, something like that. But mine's fixed now.
Huh.
It went away after a day or so.
Okay, we'll do roll this one. All right, let's make some Untamed Duders. Throw out some Reaping Threats. I like it.
All right, well, this is going to be a rare case of scrapping the boiler, I think.
Oh, yeah. Should be thinking about these things.
It's just killing one. That's not that big of a deal for you, is it?
Oh, Boiler. I was get mixed up in the names still. It was Boiler versus what was what's the one that destroys a flank creature with scrap?
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. I think it's isn't it like Scrappy?
Could be.
Did I make that up?
We are going for blood here. Snippy. Nice.
Snippy. Okay, I was close. I said Scrappy.
Just gonna smash these guys. And card to discard. I mean, this one, sure. Writing this down. I'm known to forget things. We're all in on this Dark Discovery. Uh-oh,
All right.
Fangtooth. And a Pixie.
Oof. I drew an Untamed with it.
Yeah, it doesn't help. The writing has not helped me. Witch of the Eye. Sweet. Yowza.
So close. If I were haunted, I would at least be in check.
Thank goodness.
Um, let's do TikTok first. I also would be archiving that pixie if I were haunted, but I'm not.
Oof. Oh, dang. Well, I can do that, I guess. Seems pretty good. Let's move this card. Get some monies here. I mean, we're just kind of all in anyway. Oh, purge a thing. Just to knock you a little bit farther from being haunted. Do I need a fight here? Do I need to worry? No, do your worst with the witch. Let's go.
You have nothing to worry about. It's just a witch.
Do your worst. Do it. Sleepy time. Do it.
Sleepy time. All right. Going for the witch. I'm at 8. Let's reap and take the grave pixie.
Mm-hmm.
Let's reap there. See if I can count here.
That's the hardest part.
Counting is ridiculously hard.
You need that counter golem, man. Counter
I
golem comes
really
in
wish I
handy.
had that counter golem. He hasn't arrived yet. He's still in the mail. 8, 9.
You got a
I
spooky
think that'll
charge?
work.
No, you're not. You don't have a spooky
Oh, I
charge.
don't think I have. This deck's not that good. It doesn't have a spooky charge.
Thank goodness.
Its only key cheat is an ancestral timekeeper, if you can count that. All right, we're gonna discard the poor Flumph.
Mm-hmm.
Um, this is good. Yeah, this will let me. I'm not gonna give you an extra card because I'm not gonna get value from that. And this is gonna make me haunted, which I kind of wish I. No, wait. If I play a Lost in the Wild now, is it gonna do 2? Is it gonna count itself? Because I have 9 cards right now.
If you play a Lost in the Wild,
Let's
will it
find
count
out.
itself?
It did not. I think that's correct, but I don't know for sure. But I am haunted now,
Yep.
one way or another. And my TikTok survived long enough to archive 3 cards. Let's go with TikTok.
Yeah, it's not in discard quite yet.
Boiler, BR Geist.
Brutal. Okay.
Yeah, I told you this deck's terrible, man.
You're a big jerk.
68 Saz must be terrible.
Ugh. I don't want to lose this beam of forgetting. Do I need to play this thing?
I mean, do or die, we're playing to 1 key, aren't we?
We're playing to 1 key. We are.
Okay, I was gonna say, you changing the rules on me already?
Oh, no. 1 key for sure. Just thinking about what I need to play here. Can I get to Haunted when I play Lee? I should be able to. 1, 2, 3, 4. Can do it for
Do
sure.
you have a Dark Heart of the Forest? No, okay.
No. But I'd like to have 2 non-Star Alliance Duders for my strength from diversities. Don't think I can get there with both.
I'll be impressed if you can take me off check.
I think I can stop the check if I can get Lee out ready. But I'm trying to see if I can do that while keeping up the beam of forgetting. Because I have some sloppy pips to navigate as well. All right, I need to get 4 cards in discard. Lee will take 1 away, but comes out later, so I have to get 4 cards down first. I would like to have both of the okay. 1, 2. Well, I think it's gonna have to go. That's too bad. And then I'll be in check by Amber. Ugh. Okay. So Sabotage Mission gets played. Lets the Beam of Forgetting go. And then I'm going to have to play 1 Strength from Diversity first. Sag. But let's stun your Untamed. Let's play a Strength from Diversity and capture. Let's play a Lee ready now, capturing onto itself. Reap with the Lee and get back a differently powered creature like a Grave Pixie. And then capture 2 more with the other Strength from Diversity.
What is this crap?
I wish I'll take a screenshot from that one. Some very smart person will puzzle that out for the turn I should have taken to maximize better.
I mean, I'm playing a deck with no amber control, and you're at 10 amber. So
I kind of want you to stop me so that I can forge the way I'm supposed to forge.
If you even play Dark Discovery, I'm just going to concede before that time. Yeah, I got nothing. This deck, told you, man.
TikTok,
Get to
man.
10 amber and I still can't forge.
TikTok.
Um,
Yeah, Floxamal, different power levels. So I don't think I really needed. Yeah, 3 was overkill, but I was not doing math, and I don't know if I had a better option than the Pixie getting me an extra amber anyway.
what a terrible card. See, this deck has 3 Tutor Benrillo.
I like Tutor. You don't like Tutor?
I hate Tutor. What am I supposed to do with it, though?
Hand sculpting, my guy. Tutor been sloppy. You just discard all that junk. Get your scraps going. All right. So 4 power doesn't come in ready, but the difference then being between that and Belligerent Guard, right? You get 3 optional sloppies. I don't know.
It's terrible.
Yeah, you might be right. I don't hate it.
And if you have 3 of them, like, what do you do? Like, you just keep giving your opponents draws off turn. And my draws come during my turn, and they're only useful 1/3 of the time.
Yeah, your draw is less useful. The discard up to 3 is excellent. Yeah, I don't disagree with you. Now I have a conundrum quick draw because I want to forge the red key first, but this is also my last key.
I'm going to have to let you figure that out. It sounds like a you problem.
So in your honor, I'm doing the yellow key. Yeah.
I'm conceding before you play the Dark Discovery.
That's good. I don't have it in hand. Yeah, I wish.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think this deck's amber control is non-existent.
You know, my clocks deck, which is a lot of fun, also does not have a ton, and I wonder if you're often leaning. Are you often leaning on Geistoid for amber control? Maybe not.
And in this, you mean in the set?
In this set, yeah, with the clocks taking up some spots, but you don't have a
normally
full clock
Normally,
suite.
Equidon has some amber control, but not in
Hmm.
this deck. And in fact, my only amber control in this deck is a Skeletal Murmuk and 2 Reavers. And technically, I don't even think I count Reavers
Hmm.
because they don't. They have 2 capture pips, but that's it.
So Reavers providing the capture pips. Yeah, and
Yeah,
they soak up the captured amber, right, when they reap.
yeah.
Is
When
that
they
the one?
reap, that's all my amber control right there. So it's got no key cheats, just the Ancestral Timekeeper that's never going to hit, a Skeletal Murmuk, and 2 capture.
I will say there does feel to be a divide between. There does seem to be a divide between the decks with key cheats and without. Um,
Hmm.
like that's kind of like the punch that Grim Reminders is trying to deliver. Um, at least if it's going to get take an edge off of Woe, right? Is this ability, this extra reach? Yeah.
Um,
Hmm.
I do admittedly kind of like skip over decks if I think like, oh, this looks okay, and then it doesn't have a key cheat. I'm like, never mind, it's not. I
So
feel like you need key cheats this set.
yeah, Woe had no key cheats, but could go wide very quick, or very few key cheats, but could go wide very quickly. But made up for it
Right.
with all the disruption that it had available. Right,
Yep,
there's
exactly.
less disruption generally, and I think I want the reach, the key cheat
I will
reach.
say the highest SAS deck I've opened so far, it's pretty fun to play. You played against it the other day. Has no key cheat, but it has tons of disruption in it. It's
Hmm.
got a Brawling Grounds and it's got 2 Recklessness. Um, it's got a few other ways to make them discard, I think. Um, Very cool deck, a lot of fun. No key cheat, but I think the disruption makes up for it.
Brawling Grounds is surprisingly annoying to play against.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's surprisingly annoying to play against, and the multiple recklessness decks
Mhm.
are also pretty tough to navigate. I mean, you know how much I love Punk for both the efficiency and the disruption, but like having access to that in multiples at a common is even at 3 cards, it's like you have to second guess your handcrafting. You have to second
For
guess your
sure.
card holding. Yeah, it's really
Yeah.
really good, really good.
Yeah. My double recklessness deck I am posting in the chat. Um, it's a common, and so like you said, like you compared it to punk, like you don't want to get both your punks at the same time. I find like I always draw my recklessnesses together, and it's kind of annoying because it's a very oppressive card
Mm-hmm.
for some disruption, and you just don't want to draw them together. I've seen decks with like 4 of them, which is just so strong. Um, but they're going to run into each other for sure at that point.
Yeah, I have seen up to 4 index, and yeah, it's good. It's good. Yeah, I don't have much hitting hard, at least in how Decks of Keyforge measures disruption from among the ones that I've scanned in so far. Um, Interesting. Yeah, just a few
Yeah.
here and there. Beam of forgetting. Well, all right, cool. Well, this has been a lot of fun. Bedtime, bedtime at the Sloppy Lab, I think. So,
Yeah, it sure is. Yeah. Thanks everybody for sticking around to our one key game because that's all that matters anymore. The rest of them are free.
yeah, stay sleepy, folks. See y'all around the lab. Thanks, peeps.
Thanks
Bye.
everybody.